My name is Lauren, and my family adopted me to serve their real daughter's dreams, not mine. They raised me with affection, only to twist it into obligation when they wanted me to fund my sister's future. But I won't stay silent. Not anymore. Where are you watching from? Drop your country or city in the comments. I want to know where my story is reaching hearts. It was supposed to be a casual Sunday breakfast. The kind where the smell of cinnamon rolls lingers in the air and someone's always arguing about whose turn it is to take out the trash. But that morning, in our neatly kept New Jersey kitchen, the kind that always looked like it belonged in a real estate magazine, I felt something shift. Like the air had gone cold without warning. Marilyn, my adoptive mother, didn't even wait for me to sit down before she said it. "You'll be covering Amelia's tuition." I blinked, thought I'd misheard. "What?" Dennis, my adoptive father, pushed the orange juice pitcher closer to me like this was any other conversation. "Your sister's been accepted into a competitive program in Europe. It's an incredible opportunity." "That's great for her," I said slowly. "But why would I be paying for it?" The pause that followed was deafening. Marilyn raised her eyebrows like I'd asked something absurd. "Because you can." I looked between them, heat rising in my cheeks. I work 2 jobs just to stay ahead on my own bills, you know that." Dennis gave a slow, rehearsed sigh, folding his hands. "Lauren, we've always tried to raise you right. We gave you everything when you had nothing. Remember where you came from." And there it was, that invisible leash I'd almost forgotten was there. Pulled tight in just 5 words, "Remember where you came from," my throat tightened. "I thought I was your daughter, too." Marilyn's face didn't flinch. "You are, but Amelia, she's your sister. And she's going places. She has a future," Dennis added. "We just need you to do your part." "I have done my part," I whispered. "My entire life." They acted like they hadn't heard, like I was being ungrateful. "You owe this family," Marilyn said sharply. "Without us, where would you be?" My hand was trembling around my coffee cup. I couldn't even bring it to my lips. Everything inside me, every quiet dinner, every forced smile, every time I'd skipped a party to babysit Amelia, came crashing back like a wave I hadn't seen coming. I stood up. The chair scraped back on the tile. "You want to talk about owing?" I said, voice quivering. "I've spent my whole life trying to be enough for this family, but I see now, what you really wanted was someone to fund the golden child." Dennis opened his mouth, but I wasn't waiting. I turned and walked out, my footsteps loud and uneven. Up the stairs, past the photos of our perfect family, lined up like trophies, past the painting of the farmhouse Marilyn always said reminded her of home, into the bedroom they used to call mine. I shut the door so hard the frame shuddered. For a second, I just stood there, heart pounding in my chest like it was trying to warn me. Then I slid down the door, knees hitting the carpet. I wanted to scream, but there was no one left in this house who'd hear me the way I needed. All I could do was let the silence answer me back. The walls in that house were too familiar. I knew every creak in the floorboards, every scuff mark on the hallway molding. But that night, sitting alone in my childhood bedroom, the air felt like it belonged to strangers. I hadn't spoken a word since storming upstairs. No one came after me, not even out of habit. That told me more than their words ever could. I'd left the light off. Moonlight spilled across the carpet, soft and indifferent. My phone buzzed twice before I turned it face down. I didn't need more guilt disguised as family duty. What I needed was the truth. I reached for the shoebox on the shelf above my desk, where I kept old photos, some of them faded at the edges from handling too much. There we were, me, age 10, holding Amelia's science fair poster while she basked in a ribbon. Another one, me in a wrinkled dress, helping serve snacks at her birthday party because we couldn't afford catering and I was always so helpful. I ran my fingers over our faces, mine always in the background, smiling but not really seen. One picture clung to me and Amelia in sleeping bags under the living room fort, flashlights pointed at each other, faces lit with goofy grins. She'd been 8, I was 12. That night, she told me she wanted to be a veterinarian in France. I told her I'd go with her, even if it meant cleaning cages. She'd laughed so hard she snorted cocoa out her nose. I used to believe those moments meant something, but now I could feel it, how everything had always tilted in her favor. Not out of malice, maybe, but with a quiet kind of preference that over time built into a mountain I didn't know I'd been climbing alone. I pulled out the note Amelia wrote me the night I got into community college. "You're the best big sister ever," it read in crooked letters. "When I go to Europe one day, I want you to come too." I held it between my fingers like it might still mean something. But now I had to ask the question I'd never dared to before. Was I ever anything more than the backup plan? Was all the praise? "Lauren's so responsible. Lauren can handle it." Just another way of saying we'll lean on you when it counts. I whispered the question to the darkness, voice shaking. Is it all just to make me useful? No one answered. Outside my window, a distant siren wailed. Inside, the house was still. But I couldn't unhear the echo of Marilyn's voice. "You owe this family." As if love was a debt. As if being chosen ever gave me the right to say no. I pulled the covers around me like armor, but my chest still ached. I tried to sleep, but my mind kept flipping through years of invisible compromise. Every time I'd stepped aside, kept quiet, helped out without being asked. I hadn't realized I was trading pieces of myself for approval that never quite came. Somewhere near midnight, I heard a knock on the door downstairs. Just one. Soft. Then silence. I didn't go check. The buzzer startled me out of my skin. I'd barely slept. My head was still foggy from replaying the kitchen conversation over and over until it soured my dreams. The curtains in my apartment were still drawn, the only light coming from the microwave clock. I shuffled over, bleary-eyed, and pressed the intercom button without thinking. "Lauren, it's Mom and Dad." My heart stopped. Dennis's voice was steady, polite, like he was announcing himself at a Sunday brunch, not dropping in after emotionally mugging me the day before. "We brought a few things, let us up." I didn't answer. A pause. Marilyn's voice floated through next, all sugar and gloss. "Sweetheart, open the door, we won't stay long." I hesitated. Part of me wanted to pretend I wasn't home. But curiosity got the better of me, along with a simmering need to look them in the eye and see if they truly believed what they'd said yesterday. I pressed the buzzer. They arrived within 2 minutes, as if they'd been waiting in the car, watching. Dennis stood with 2 paper bags of groceries, carefully balanced in his arms. Marilyn smiled like we were in some 1950s TV family, stepping forward to air-kiss my cheek. I stepped back, jaw clenched. "You could have called." "We thought it best to talk in person," Marilyn said, walking in like she still had keys. "You seemed emotional yesterday." Emotional, right, that's what she called betrayal now. Dennis placed the bags on my counter, methodically unpacking them. Bananas, oat milk, bagels, a tub of hummus, my usual brands. He still remembered. That only made it worse. "We just want what's best for your sister," he said without looking up. "She's worked hard, and you're in a position to help." "You're acting like I'm a trust fund heiress," I said. "I work overtime and skip vacations so I can afford rent and student loan interest." Marilyn leaned against the counter, fixing a lock of her highlighted hair. "We know you're not swimming in money, but we also know you're responsible. You always have been." Dennis chimed in. "You're the only one we can rely on, Lauren. That's why we're coming to you." There it was again. That backhanded compliment wrapped in manipulation. I was the reliable one. The practical one. The daughter who didn't need attention because she made herself small enough not to cause trouble. I took a slow breath. "You didn't come here to ask. You came to pressure me where I couldn't walk out." Marilyn's mouth curled like I'd said something rude. "That's not fair." "Fair," I laughed, a dry, bitter sound. "Fair would have been you raising us equally, not praising me when I gave up things for Amelia, not expecting me to give more just because I never asked for anything back." Dennis's face hardened. "We didn't come here to be accused." "Then you shouldn't have walked into my apartment with a guilt parade." Marilyn reached for one of the bagels, slicing it as if we were mid-breakfast. "You'll regret pushing us away. Families don't survive on pride." "No," I said, "they don't survive on leeches either." Her hands paused mid-slice. "Excuse me." I said what I meant. Dennis stepped forward then, voice tightening. "You better rethink this attitude. You owe this family more than you admit." My phone was on the table. I picked it up slowly, keeping my eyes on him. "If you try this again, I'll call the police. You're not welcome here." Silence. Marilyn looked stunned, like she didn't believe I'd say it out loud. Dennis's mouth twitched, like he was calculating whether this was bluff or truth. "Lauren," "No," I interrupted. Don't Lauren me. You're not here to talk. You're here to make me feel small enough to say yes. They both stood there, still as portraits. Then Dennis reached for the grocery bag, paused, and left it behind. They turned and walked to the door. Marilyn looked back once, her face unreadable, but I didn't move. I waited until I heard the elevator ding until the building swallowed them. Then I locked the door. The groceries sat untouched. A peace offering wrapped in expectation. I stared at the oat milk like it was poison. I should have felt shaken. I should have cried. But I didn't. Instead, I walked to the bathroom and stared at my reflection. My eyes were tired, my lips pressed thin, but I looked like someone who just reclaimed something sacred. They thought they could still get to me, but something in me had shifted, and it wasn't going back. I wasn't expecting the knock that afternoon. It was soft, 2 taps, then a pause, like whoever stood outside wasn't sure they should be there at all. I peeked through the peephole and froze. Amelia. She was holding her backpack in one hand and a white paper bag in the other, like a student about to apologize for missing class. Her cheeks were flushed from the wind, or maybe nerves, and she was wearing that old navy hoodie with the fraying sleeves. The one I gave her years ago when we used to watch Disney marathons on the couch, legs tangled under one blanket. I opened the door. She looked up at me with a hopeful half-smile. Hey, can we talk? Her voice was soft, a little shaky. Not like Marilyn's polished edge or Dennis's cold reason. Just her. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no either. I stepped aside. She slipped in like a gust of quiet air, her eyes darting around the room like it might explode. I brought pastries, she said, holding up the paper bag. Those mini apple things from that cafe near the library. You used to love them. I nodded, still unsure whether this was an ambush or a peace offering. She sat on the edge of the couch, hugging her backpack like it was armor. I stayed standing. The silence stretched, but not in an awkward way, in a heavy way. Like we both knew something fragile was on the table between us and neither wanted to knock it off. I didn't know, she said finally, staring at her sneakers. What Mom and Dad said to you. I didn't know they were putting everything on you. I leaned against the kitchen counter, arms folded. Didn't you? Even a little. Her eyes flicked up, wounded. No, I mean, I knew they talked about you being responsible. I knew they depended on you more, but I didn't know they expected you to pay for me. I let out a quiet breath, somewhere between a laugh and a sigh. You never wondered why I skipped dances to drive you to art class, or why I gave up that out-of-state college to stay close and help out. Her face paled. I don't know, I thought you were just being you. Exactly, I said, my voice sharper than I meant. Because being me meant sacrificing things without complaining. That's what they trained me to be good at. She looked down again. I sat across from her then, not too close. I didn't come here to guilt you, she said, fingers tightening around the strap of her bag. I needed to see you because I don't want this to ruin us. I wanted to scoff, us, as if we were still a team. But then I saw something in her face I hadn't expected, fear. Not the manipulative kind Marilyn wore like perfume. Real fear of losing me, of being used and tossed in the middle of a war she didn't start. I'd never ask this of you, she whispered. I didn't ask them to pressure you. I didn't even want to go, not if it meant hurting you. That broke something in me, not because it erased everything, but because it sounded real. I softened just a little. So why are you here? She gave a shaky smile. Because I'm terrified, about going, about leaving. About doing something alone for the first time and not having you there to fix it. I blinked, surprised. You were always the strong one, she said, and there was no sarcasm in her voice, just quiet awe. Even when I didn't realize it. I looked at her, really looked at her, this young woman who still had so much growing up to do, who had dreams but not the tools to fight for them the way I had to learn. I didn't trust Marilyn and Dennis, but maybe, just maybe, I still trusted her. I'll help, I said after a long pause. But not for them, not because they think they own me. She blinked, stunned. I'll help you because I love you, because you're my sister, even if they never treated us like equals. Her lip trembled and she nodded. That's all I wanted. We didn't hug right then, but something between us clicked back into place, uneven, bruised, but still beating. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was making a choice that was mine. Later that night, the apartment smelled like cocoa and cinnamon. I'd lit the tiny vanilla candle Amelia gave me for my 25th birthday, a gift she forgot to wrap and handed to me in a crumpled pharmacy bag. I never told her, but I'd kept it untouched all this time. Something about it felt more honest than all the holiday presents Marilyn curated for the family photo. Now it flickered between us on the coffee table, casting soft shadows against the chipped mugs in our hands. "You remember that camping trip when we got lost in the woods?" Amelia asked between sips. "You told me you could hear water, so we followed your voice until we found the creek." I laughed. "I had no idea where I was going." "You liar." "No, really," I grinned. "I was bluffing so you wouldn't panic. I was absolutely certain we were going to be eaten by raccoons." She nearly snorted cocoa through her nose. "You were so convincing. I told everyone at school you were like some kind of forest ninja." We both doubled over laughing, and for a moment it was just us again, Lauren and Amelia, the sisters who built blanket forts and whispered secrets under glow-in-the-dark stars. "You always looked out for me," she said after the laughter faded. "Even when we were kids, it's like you knew things were off, but you didn't want me to feel it." I looked down at my mug. Marshmallows had melted into a creamy swirl. I wanted to say, yeah, because I was the insurance policy and you were the dream they actually wanted to fund. But I didn't. Instead, I shrugged. "You were easy to protect." She tilted her head, eyes warm. "Still, you gave up a lot." I didn't respond. She leaned back against the cushions. "I've been thinking maybe I'm not ready to leave. Maybe I should just defer for a year." And there it was, that flicker of fear again, the one she carried beneath her sarcasm and Pinterest boards. I recognized it now. It was the same fear I used to carry in my 20s. What if I'm only strong when someone else is steering? "You can't defer fear," I said gently. "You either go or you stay stuck wondering." She nodded, quiet, then "Promise you'll visit." "I might just move in with you," I said, half joking. Her eyes sparkled. "I'd make you breakfast every morning." I gave her a look. "Amelia, the last time you made toast you set off 3 smoke alarms." We laughed again, longer this time. The kind of laughter that softens everything it touches. But in the back of my mind, something knotted tighter. She didn't know what our parents had said. Didn't know how close I'd come to walking away from all of it. She still thought they were just flawed humans doing their best. And maybe for her they had been. I didn't want to be the one to shatter that for her. Not yet. Because for the first time in a long time, she was looking at me like I mattered. Not because I was useful or reliable or a built-in safety net, but because I was Lauren, her sister. And tonight that was enough. Over the next week, my tiny apartment transformed into a revolving door of plans and errands. We made lists. Checked things off, changed our minds, made more lists. It felt like we were planning a vacation, not a major life move. But maybe that was the only way either of us could cope. Treat it like an adventure, not a goodbye. We went coach shopping first. Amelia spun in front of the mirror wearing a deep green trench that made her eyes look brighter. "Too dramatic?" she asked, flicking the collar like a spy. I shook my head. "Perfect amount of dramatic. European cities demand a little flair." She grinned, biting her lip. "Okay, but you're buying the matching scarf. I refuse to go full fashion alone." Then came the airline ticket. We sat cross-legged on my couch, laptop open, juggling tabs and discount codes. When we finally hit confirm, she let out a breath like she'd been holding it for a year. "It's real now," she said, voice small. I didn't say it out loud, but I felt it too. Something in the air had shifted, like the door to an old life had finally creaked open and she was stepping through first. We filled the in-between hours with bubble tea runs and window shopping. At a thrift store downtown, she tried on a vintage wool beret and posed in front of a mirror. "I look like I write tragic poems in Paris," she declared. "You look like you haunt cobblestone alleyways judging tourists," I replied. She laughed so hard the cashier stared. It was easy to forget how much fun we used to have, when we weren't tangled up in our parents' expectations or invisible scorekeeping. Back when we just were. One afternoon, we wandered into an old bookstore tucked behind a bakery. It smelled like dust and ink and cinnamon. She found a dog-eared copy of Le Petit Prince in French and clutched it like a prize. "I used to think he was lonely because of the stars," she said, tracing the cover. "Now I think he just missed home." "You're going to be okay," I said, more to myself than her. Outside, the sun was low and gold, spilling across the sidewalk like a painting. She looked over. "Promise you'll visit." I smiled. "I might just move in with you." She rolled her eyes. You say that now, but wait until you see how small the apartments are. I've lived in New Jersey with paper-thin walls. I'll survive. We walked home, carrying her coat and the book, our shadows long and side by side. There was a lightness to those days, a kind of peace I hadn't known I'd needed. But it wasn't just joy, it was healing. Every laugh, every shared coffee, every quiet moment where nothing was expected of me felt like a stitch in something that had been ripped for years. Sometimes, I caught myself watching her when she wasn't looking, wondering how she'd turned out so kind in a household that had measured love in usefulness. I still hadn't told her what Marilyn and Dennis had said. Maybe I was selfish for keeping it to myself. Maybe I was just tired of being the one who always carried the weight of the truth. Because for now, she was smiling again. And I didn't want to break that. Not yet. It had been a good day. I'd finally finished setting up Amelia's travel folder, passport copies, enrollment letters, even a color-coded packing list. We'd spent the afternoon curled on the couch watching reruns of a show we used to love in middle school. She'd fallen asleep halfway through episode 2, and I'd let her. Her head rested on a pillow she used to call Mr. Squish when she was 10. After she left, I made tea, dimmed the lights, and sat down to check my budget. I wasn't rolling in money, never had been, but I'd saved enough to make her trip happen, one payment at a time. It wasn't just tuition. There were visa fees, the deposit for her student housing, a new laptop, international insurance, the train pass. It added up fast. Still, I'd made peace with it. Kindness didn't always need a receipt. I was scrolling through my budgeting app, adjusting categories and moving money from my small emergency fund when I heard a knock. Not the soft, uncertain kind like Amelia's. No, this one was confident, rhythmic, cold, 3 precise knocks. I froze. My phone was still in my hand. I walked to the door slowly, glancing through the peephole, and nearly dropped it. Dennis and Marilyn. Again. This time, no groceries, no bright smiles. Marilyn wore her usual trench coat, lips pressed in a tight line. Dennis's arms were crossed. They didn't look like parents visiting. They looked like lawyers about to serve papers. I didn't open the door. Instead, I spoke through it. What do you want? Dennis leaned in. You're not backing out, are you? Something in me clenched. Backing out of what? You know exactly what, Marilyn cut in, her voice icy. After everything we've done for you, don't be foolish now. I almost laughed. Foolish. For not letting myself be bled dry. I said I'd help Amelia, I replied, hand tightening on the doorknob. I never said I'd sign over my life. There was a pause. Then Marilyn said it, the thing that curled my blood cold. We'll tell her everything, every sacrifice we made, every secret. You want her to love you more than us. You think you've won her over with Coco and Coach shopping. Wait until she finds out what you're hiding. I pressed my forehead against the door, closing my eyes. You want to ruin her too, she continued, voice rising. You think we raised her for you to steal her loyalty now? You think we don't know what you're doing? I took a long breath. Then I opened the door. They flinched just slightly at the sound. I looked at them, not the people who used to tuck me in, not the ones who hung my drawings on the fridge like I was theirs. No, these were strangers, predators, people who smiled while planting knives. Do what you want, I said calmly. Tell her whatever twisted story you've rehearsed. Turn her against me if you can. Dennis took a step forward. Lauren, don't be dramatic. I'm not scared anymore. My voice was even, firm, like granite. They didn't expect that, not from me. They blinked. Marilyn's mouth opened, then shut. Dennis's jaw flexed. I stepped back and shut the door in their faces. No slamming, no theatrics, just the soft click of a lock turning. For a full minute, I stood there, listening to the silence on the other side. They didn't knock again. When I finally sat back down, my hands were steady. Because the truth was, they didn't own me anymore. And they knew it. That night, my apartment was too quiet. The kind of quiet that made every little sound, pipes settling, the fridge clicking on, a car door slamming 2 blocks away, echo like it was happening right inside me. Sleep didn't even try. I tossed and turned, the sheets twisted around my legs, my pillow damp against my cheek from the heat and tears I didn't remember shedding. The words Marilyn had said echoed like poison. You're not backing out, are you? We'll tell her everything. You want to ruin her too. That last line replayed the most, like a curse. Ruin her, me, the one person who'd spent her whole life trying not to be a burden. The one who traded dances for dishes, dates for babysitting shifts, dreams for someone else's college brochures. Was I doing that now all over again? I thought I was helping Amelia, protecting her from the rot I'd grown up learning to tolerate. But what if I was just repeating the cycle in a prettier dress? What if keeping her in the dark was its own form of betrayal? At 12:41 a.m., I sat up in bed and reached for my phone. The screen lit my face in the dark. My banking app was already open, staring me down like a dare. There it was, the pending tuition payment. The number big and final and irreversible. One tap, and it would go through. Amelia would be officially registered. She'd get the letter, the apartment key, the new life she'd been dreaming of since she was old enough to mispronounce France. And she'd never know what it cost. My thumb hovered over the screen, shaking. I told myself it didn't matter, that she didn't need to carry the weight of what Dennis and Marilyn had said, that it wouldn't change anything. She deserved to go, deserved to have one person believe in her without strings, but I couldn't press it. Not yet. I dropped the phone on the mattress like it was burning my hand and stood up, pacing barefoot across the floor. The apartment was cool, but my skin was clammy. My heart wouldn't settle. I walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, leaned against the counter and stared out at the blinking streetlight outside. It was always that streetlight. I'd seen it flicker every night since I moved in. It never bothered me before. Now it felt like a warning, like even the city was asking, "Are you sure?" I pressed my forehead to the cool glass of the window. My reflection stared back, distorted in the night, tired eyes, unwashed hair, a woman who had too many thoughts and no roadmap. Maybe I should have told her, right from the start. Let Amelia decide for herself. But I'd been so afraid of breaking something between us, I'd done the one thing I always swore I wouldn't. I'd made choices for her behind her back. I remembered how she looked the night she came over, hopeful, wide-eyed, clutching that paper bag of pastries like a peace treaty. How she'd said, "You were always the strong one." If she ever found out the truth, would she still say that? Would she still want me in her life? Or would Marilyn win, not by turning her against me, but by showing her I'd become just like them, controlling, deceptive, self-righteous under the guise of protection? The thought made my throat close. I sat back on the couch, pulled my knees up to my chest, and stared at the flickering screen of my phone across the room. The transfer still sat there, untouched. I couldn't send it. Not until I knew what the right thing actually was, because for once I didn't want to be the dependable one, the responsible one, the easy yes. I wanted to be the honest one, but I didn't know if that version of me even existed anymore. By morning, I was unraveling. I'd managed maybe an hour of sleep, just enough to wake up feeling worse than I had before. My head was buzzing, like bees trapped behind my eyes, and I couldn't focus on anything for more than a second. The apartment was still a mess from the week of packing chaos and sisterly bonding, but now every sweater flung over a chair or receipt on the counter felt like a weight. I needed air, and I needed someone who didn't share my DNA. I texted Naomi. "Me, coffee." Her reply came seconds later. "Naomi, already ordering. Meet at Hollow and Beam." We'd been going to that cafe since college. It was the kind of place that always smelled like rosemary and warm bread, with tiny succulents on every table and baristas who wore beanies year-round like it was a uniform requirement. When I got there, she was already at our usual corner table, sipping something green and aggressively healthy. She took one look at me and slid a croissant across the table. "Eat. You look like you argued with the apocalypse." I collapsed into the chair and bit into the croissant without protest. Flaky, buttery heaven, she waited, letting me chew before asking, "So, who set your world on fire this time?" I stared at the foam art in my cappuccino. "My parents showed up again, threatening me." Her eyes narrowed. "They came back after the last time." I nodded. "This time they said if I don't finish paying for Amelia's program, they'll tell her everything." "Tell her what?" I took a shaky breath. About the manipulation, about how they've been using me for years, about the way they positioned her future as my responsibility. Naomi sat back, arms crossed. "So, the truth," I blinked. "Well, yeah, but you're afraid she'll hate you for not telling her first." I nodded. Naomi leaned in, voice softer. "You're not the one who lit the match, Lauren. You just finally stopped pretending the house wasn't burning." I looked at her, eyes stinging. "She's not your enemy," Naomi said. She's your family, and real family doesn't break when the truth comes out, they just take a minute to process. But what if she takes their side? I whispered. What if all of this backfires? What if I hurt her by keeping quiet? What if I already did? Naomi reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Then you explain, you tell her why. You tell her you were scared. You tell her everything. Because hiding the truth to protect someone only works until they find out they were kept in the dark. I sat there staring at the little plant between us. Its leaves were glossy and curved upward like it was leaning toward the light. I swallowed hard. I don't want to punish Amelia for their poison. Then don't, she said, but don't drink it yourself either. Her words hit me like cool water, not harsh, just clear. For the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe. I needed this, I said quietly. I didn't even know how badly. Naomi smiled. That's why I'm here. To feed you carbs and remind you you're not crazy. I laughed. It felt like the first real laugh in days. We sat there a while longer, sipping and nibbling, letting the world feel a little more manageable. By the time I left, I still didn't have all the answers, but I had something better. Clarity, and maybe that was enough. That evening, the apartment was quieter than usual, not heavy like the night before, just still, like the calm before a shift you can't quite name. I'd spent most of the day cleaning up, folding Amelia's things into neat piles, sorting receipts, repacking the travel folder with every document alphabetized, laminated where needed, even stapled with color-coded notes. I wasn't just preparing my sister to leave, I was building armor. I wanted her to land overseas with the sense that someone had thought of everything, because I had. Around 6:30, there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find Amelia holding a tiny cake box in both hands, a shy smile blooming on her face. "Surprise," she said. I blinked. "What is this?" She walked in and placed the box carefully on the kitchen counter like it was something sacred. "I know it's silly," she said, untying the ribbon. "But I saw this little bento cake shop on Instagram and thought, why not? I wanted to thank you." I opened the lid. Inside was a delicate white cake, frosted with pale lavender swirls and tiny lettering piped in gold. To my real one yellow heart, I felt my throat catch. "Don't cry," she said quickly, already tearing up herself. "Or I will, and it'll be gross and will ruin the cake." I laughed, but the tears were already there, burning. "You didn't have to do this." "I did," she said, and her voice cracked a little. "You've given me more than anyone ever has, Lauren, not just money, time, belief. Space to be scared and still feel like I mattered." She pulled a small envelope from her coat pocket and handed it to me. "I wrote you something, you don't have to read it now." I held it like it might break. Then, in typical Amelia fashion, she sniffed and said, "Okay, enough sap. Get dressed. We're supposed to be at the restaurant by 8. It's French, very fancy. Mom made a big deal about the reservation." She moved to the mirror to fix her eyeliner. I stood by the counter, the card in my hand, the cake smiling at me with its simple, perfect message. It almost felt like nothing could touch us. I went to the bedroom to change. I'd barely pulled a blouse from the hanger when my phone buzzed on the nightstand. I glanced at it, expecting maybe a message from Naomi or a group text from Amelia's friends about directions. But it wasn't that. It was from Marilyn, 1 sentence, 10 words. "Don't come. It's for real family. You're not invited." The air left my lungs. I stared at the screen, rereading it like maybe it would change if I blinked hard enough. But it didn't. I sat down slowly, fingers tightening around the phone until I thought the plastic would crack. In the kitchen, I could hear Amelia humming, oblivious, digging through drawers for candles or a lighter. And all I could think was, how dare they, how dare she, after everything, after years of compliance, of service, of silence, they still didn't see me. They still didn't want to. Something inside me flipped, a cold, clear fury rising beneath the heartbreak. I opened my banking app, scrolled to the tuition line, canceled it. Next, the airline confirmation, 2 clicks, voided. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I sat there, watching the screen refresh until the numbers turned red, the status changed to canceled, and the future they tried to steal from me was no longer mine to fund. At 12:09 a.m., long after Amelia left for the dinner, still assuming I was coming, my phone buzzed again. "Amelia, why didn't you come? I waited." I stared at it for a long time. Then I replied, Ask Mom why. She said I'm not family. There was no response at first, just the dull, hollow ache of what could have been a good night curdling into betrayal. But 20 minutes later, I heard pounding at my door. When I opened it, Amelia stood there, breathless, mascara-streaked, suitcase in hand, fury flashing in her eyes. "Get dressed," she said, voice shaking. "We're going to end this." It was barely dawn when we parked in front of the house. The sky was still that deep ink blue just before sunrise. The neighborhood sat silent, every porch light off, every car dewed over with the hush of early morning. But inside me, a storm was waking up. Amelia sat beside me in the passenger seat, her suitcase in the trunk, her jaw clenched like she was chewing glass. Neither of us had spoken much on the drive. She'd barely changed out of her dinner clothes. Her coat was wrinkled, her shoes mismatched, but her eyes were clear. When I'd opened the door hours earlier and told her what Marilyn had texted, something inside her had cracked, and whatever poured out was all fury and clarity. "They think they can decide who I love," she'd said. "They think they get to define family." Now she was here to tell them otherwise. We walked up the familiar steps together, side by side. She didn't knock. She used her old key, the one Dennis never remembered to take back after her first year of college. It turned in the lock with a dull click, and the door creaked open like it was expecting us. Inside, the house was still dark. I saw the glow of the hallway nightlight, the same one that used to guide us to the bathroom when we were little. I used to think of it as a beacon. Now it just felt like a ghost. Marilyn appeared at the end of the hallway in a robe and slippers, her hand clutching the banister. Her eyes widened when she saw Amelia. "Sweetheart," she said too quickly, "you're back." Amelia held up her hand. Don't start." Dennis emerged next, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "It's not even 6 in the morning. What's going on?" "You sent a text," Amelia said, voice shaking but firm. "You told Lauren not to come. Said she wasn't family." There was a pause, just long enough to let the lie bloom. "I don't know what you're talking about," Marilyn said. I let out a sharp breath. Of course, Amelia pulled out her phone. "She showed me. I read it. Don't insult me by pretending." Marilyn stepped forward, all softness. "Honey, we were upset. It was a misunderstanding." "No," Amelia snapped. "It was a threat. You told her you'd ruin my view of her, that you'd twist everything she's ever done for me into guilt. You made her believe helping me would cost her everything." Dennis's face hardened. "We were just trying to protect your future. By using her." Amelia turned to me, her hands trembling, then back to them. "She raised me more than either of you ever did. You gave her scraps of attention and mountains of responsibility and called it parenting." Silence. And then she said the one thing I never expected her to say. "You should thank her." Marilyn blinked. "What?" Amelia pointed at me. "You should thank her for every night she covered for me, every ride, every lie she swallowed so I wouldn't get hurt, every dime she scraped together to give me a shot you didn't want to pay for." Dennis scoffed. "This is absurd." "No," Amelia said, standing taller. "What's absurd is thinking love is something you can ration. That daughters are investments. That Lauren was your insurance policy while I got to chase dreams." I felt something shift in my chest. A pressure I hadn't even known was there started to release. Marilyn crossed her arms. "She's turned you against us." "No," Amelia said. "You did that, one text at a time." Dennis looked at me then, jaw tight. "What do you want, Lauren? An apology?" I looked between them, two people I had tried my whole life to please, and realized for the first time I didn't want anything from them. Not a sorry, not a reconciliation, not even acknowledgement, just space. And silence. And freedom. Amelia nodded slowly. "I think she deserves one." The air hung thick. Dennis shifted, clearing his throat. "Thank you, Lauren." It was the most insincere thing I'd ever heard. I didn't respond. I just looked at Amelia and said, "Let's go." She grabbed her suitcase. We walked out without another word. Outside, the sun had started to rise, a thin line of gold stretching over the houses. As we got into the car, Amelia glanced at me and whispered, "That was the last time I'll ever call them home." I didn't say anything, but I reached across the gearshift and took her hand. And together, we drove toward something better. The sun was higher by the time we got back to my apartment. We didn't say much on the way. There wasn't anything left to say. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It felt complete, like we'd finally set something down after carrying it for too long. Inside, Amelia dropped her suitcase by the door and collapsed onto the couch with a long, exhausted sigh. "Is it weird that I don't feel guilty?" she asked, eyes on the ceiling. "No," I said, setting down the keys. "It's called peace." She smiled, soft and tired. We sat there for a while, letting the morning wrap around us. I made toast, burned it ironically, and we both laughed too hard over the smoke detector's shriek. "You really might have to move in with me," she said, waving a dish towel. "I'm not sure I can survive Berlin without someone who knows how to stop a fire. I'll add smoke alarm whisperer to my resume." After breakfast, we packed up what was left. Final edits to her documents, one last check of the passport. She slipped the envelope she'd given me the night before into my travel wallet. "Open it on the plane," she said. "I'm serious, not before." I saluted. "Yes, ma'am." At noon, we drove to the train station, her first stop before the airport. The platform was already filling up with students and parents, people hugging and smiling, saying excited goodbyes. We weren't smiling, not because we were sad, but because there was something bigger under the surface. A knowing. A bond made sharper, more honest, forged through years of imbalance and finally set right. As the train approached, she turned to me. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I know, but I feel strong too." "That's because you are." She hugged me, arms tight. "Thank you for everything." I squeezed her back. "I'd do it all again, just not for them, only for you." She pulled away, eyes shining. "Promise you'll visit," I grinned. "I might just move in with you." She laughed as she boarded. I stood there long after the train pulled away, watching until the last bit of it disappeared into the distance. And when I got home, I didn't cry. I didn't collapse. I cleaned up, lit a candle, and sat down at the table. I didn't open the envelope yet. I wasn't ready to look back. Because, for the first time, I was looking forward. 3 months later, I woke up to the sound of the S-Bahn gliding past just below our window. Berlin mornings had a rhythm all their own. A mix of bikes zipping down cobblestone streets, cafe doors creaking open, and the hum of early chatter in a dozen languages. I'd grown to love it, this constant reminder that the world was bigger than the house we grew up in. Amelia was already in the kitchen, wrapped in a ridiculous fluffy robe she found at a flea market, sipping coffee and reading a German magazine like she actually understood half of it. She looked up and grinned. "I didn't burn the toast today." I clapped. "Personal growth." We took our breakfast, croissants, fresh fruit, and coffee out to the tiny balcony. The city buzzed softly beneath us. We sat in the sun, barefoot, with our plates on our laps and our legs propped on mismatched chairs. It was simple, beautiful, ours. "This still feels surreal," she said. "Every day," I nodded. "Me too." She turned to me, serious for a moment. "Do you ever miss them?" I took a sip of coffee, thought about it. "No," I said. "I miss the version of them I used to believe in, but I don't miss them." She nodded slowly. "Yeah, me neither." There was no bitterness in her voice, just clarity. I reached into the side drawer of the patio table and pulled out the little envelope she'd given me the night of the dinner. I'd kept it close, unopened all this time. "Hey," I said. "I think I'm finally ready." She blinked. "Seriously," I nodded. She sat up straighter as I carefully peeled back the flap. Inside was a single folded sheet of notebook paper, her handwriting messier than usual. "Lauren, I don't know where I'd be if you hadn't picked up all the pieces they kept dropping. I don't know how you didn't break from all the things they never let you say out loud. But I do know this, you've always been my real sister. Not because they said so, not because we shared a house, but because you showed up over and over when no one else did, when I was scared, when I was stupid, when I was selfish. You stayed. And that means more than blood ever could. I hope you find your own dream next. I hope you stop dimming yourself just to fit inside other people's definitions of good. I hope you know you are enough, you always were. Love, Amelia." I didn't realize I was crying until a tear dropped onto the corner of the letter. Amelia didn't say anything. She just reached over and held my hand. We sat like that for a while, letting it settle, letting the old hurt breathe one last time before we let it go. Later that day, we walked to the bookstore on the corner, the same one where she found Le Petit Prince. I bought a little notebook. Blue cover, gold edges. Amelia asked what I'd use it for. "I don't know yet," I said. "Maybe I'll start writing, maybe I'll finally do something that's just mine." She smiled. Good, it's time. That night, over another box of pastries and a glass of wine, we toasted, not to escape or survival, but to something bigger, choice. We had chosen each other, not because we had to, but because we wanted to. And that's the only kind of family that truly matters.